I'm 72 years old, and this morning I stayed in bed until almost noon. Not because I was sick or particularly tired, because getting up felt impossible. Not physically impossible, emotionally impossible. I laid there for hours, staring at the ceiling, knowing I needed to get up, knowing the day was passing, and I just couldn't make myself move. And when I finally did drag myself out of bed, shuffling to the kitchen in the same clothes I'd slept in, I realized this has been happening more and more often. This paralysis, this inability to start my day, this feeling that nothing matters enough to get out of bed. It started maybe 8 months ago. I'd sleep a little later than usual, hit snooze on the alarm a few extra times, tell myself I deserved a rest, and that was fine at first, normal even. But then sleeping late became sleeping later. 9 o'clock became 10, became 11, became lying in bed half the day, not sleeping but not getting up either. Just existing in this grey space between sleep and waking, unwilling or unable to face another day alone. I told myself I was just tired, that I needed more rest, that this was normal for someone my age. But deep down I knew it wasn't about being tired. It was about not having a reason to get up. No one waiting for me. No job to go to. No obligations or appointments or people depending on me. Just another empty day stretching out ahead, identical to yesterday and the day before and the day that would come tomorrow. I live alone. I've lived alone for 6 years since my wife passed. And living alone after 70 means your days have no external structure. No one cares if you get up at 7 or noon or not at all. No one notices if you spend the whole day in bed. No one is there to pull you out of the dark place you're sinking into. You're entirely responsible for creating meaning in your own days. And when you can't find that meaning anymore, when you can't remember why getting up matters, there's nothing and no one to save you from yourself. Have you felt this happening? Days when staying in bed feels easier than facing another empty day. The mornings became the hardest part. That moment of waking up and realizing you're still here, still alive, facing another day that looks exactly like the last one. No plans, no purpose. Nothing that requires you to be anywhere or do anything. Just hours to fill somehow until you can justify going back to bed. And the weight of that emptiness, it's crushing. It makes pulling back the covers feel like lifting a boulder. I stopped showering every day. What was the point? I wasn't seeing anyone. Wasn't going anywhere. I could wear the same clothes for days and no one would know. Could skip shaving for a week. Could let myself go in all the small ways that used to matter when I had somewhere to be and someone to be presentable for. But now, alone in my house, those standards felt pointless, optional, and one by one I let them drop. When was the last time you had a reason to get dressed properly? When was the last time your day had shape and purpose instead of just being hours to endure? I started eating less. Not intentionally, just forgetting about meals because time stopped having structure. Breakfast happens when you get up. But if you don't get up until 11, do you still eat breakfast? Or do you skip to lunch? And if lunch is at 3, is dinner at 6 too soon? The whole rhythm of the day collapsed when I stopped getting up at a normal time. Meals became random, often skipped. Sometimes I'd realize at 8 in the evening that I hadn't eaten all day and couldn't summon the energy to fix something. My son called one morning at 10 and I was still in bed. I heard the phone ringing but didn't answer. Couldn't face talking to him, couldn't face pretending I was up and functioning and living a normal life. He called back an hour later and I still didn't answer. Later that day he left a message asking if I was okay, saying he was worried, asking me to call him back. But I didn't. Because what would I say? That I'd spent the day in bed for no reason. that I couldn't make myself participate in my own life anymore. The house started to reflect my state. Mail piled up unopened, dishes sat in the sink, laundry went undone. Because all of those tasks required getting up, getting moving, engaging with the world in some small way. And I couldn't, or wouldn't. The line between couldn't and wouldn't got blurry. Did I lack the physical energy to do these things, or did I lack the will? I honestly didn't know anymore. Do you recognize this feeling? This overwhelming inertia that makes even the smallest tasks feel insurmountable. My daughter came to visit unannounced and found me in bed at 2 in the afternoon. The curtains were closed. I was in my pajamas, which I'd been wearing for 3 days. The house was dim and stuffy and smelled stale. She looked shocked. Actually shocked. She asked if I was sick, and I said no. She asked why I was in bed, and I didn't have an answer. I just laid there looking at her, feeling ashamed but not ashamed enough to get up. She opened the curtains, and the light hurt my eyes. She opened windows, and fresh air poured in. She made me tea and toast, and sat on the edge of my bed and asked what was wrong. Really wrong. And I couldn't explain it. How do you explain that you've lost the ability to care about being alive? That getting through a day feels pointless when you're just going to wake up tomorrow and do it all again? That elderly living alone has become elderly just existing, not living, just marking time until something ends it. She stayed all day, made me shower, made me get dressed in clean clothes, made me eat a real meal at the table instead of in bed, and while we ate she talked about getting me help. Not a nursing home. She didn't say that, but I heard it anyway, lurking behind her concern. The unspoken fear that I couldn't take care of myself anymore. That this, whatever this was, meant I was no longer capable of living alone. And maybe she was right. Because this wasn't just depression or sadness or grief. This was something deeper. This was losing the fundamental ability to function, to structure my own days, to find reasons to get out of bed. This was aging and independence pulling apart in the most insidious way possible. Not my body failing, but my will to use my body at all. She made me promise to see my doctor. And I went, mostly, to get her off my back. And my doctor asked questions, and listened, and used words I didn't like. But then, he said something that stuck with me. He said that living alone after 70 requires strong internal motivation, and when that motivation disappears, everything collapses. That what I was experiencing wasn't weakness or laziness. It was a genuine crisis that needed addressing. That I needed structure and support and reasons to get up that came from outside myself, since I couldn't generate them internally anymore. We made changes together. My daughter and I. She started calling me every morning at 8. Not to check up on me, though that's part of it, but to give me a reason to be awake and out of bed by 8. Someone expecting me to answer. Someone who would notice if I didn't. And she signed me up for a senior center program. Activities 3 days a week. Places I needed to be. People expecting me. External structure to replace the internal structure I'd lost. She also found a therapist who specializes in older adults. Someone I could talk to about this emptiness. This loss of purpose. This feeling that nothing matters anymore. And slowly, over weeks, I started to understand that what I was experiencing had a name. That it was serious. That it was stealing my independence as surely as a broken hip or failing memory, just in a quieter, more invisible way. It's been 2 months now. I still have hard days. Days when getting up feels impossible. Days when I want nothing more than to pull the covers over my head and disappear. But I get up anyway. Because someone is calling at 8. Because I have somewhere to be at 10. Because there are people who notice if I don't show up. And slowly, I'm finding small reasons to be awake and dressed and participating in life. I'm learning that losing independence doesn't always look like falls or illness or forgetting. Sometimes it looks like staying in bed because you've lost the ability to care about getting up. Sometimes it looks like days bleeding into each other with no structure or purpose. Sometimes it looks like a slow retreat from life until you're not really living anymore, just existing in the dark. If you're staying in bed longer and longer, if your days have no structure, if you've lost the internal motivation to get up and participate in life, please hear what I'm saying. This is serious. This is a crisis, even if it doesn't look like one. This is how you lose your independence without ever falling or getting sick. This is how isolation and emptiness steal everything from you. There's still time to build structure back into your life. There's still time to find external reasons to get up when internal ones have disappeared. But there's not unlimited time. And waiting until you've withdrawn completely. Until you're spending entire days or weeks in bed. Until someone else has to intervene. That's when you lose all control over what happens next. So please, look at your own patterns honestly. When do you get up? Why do you get up? Do you have reasons that matter, or are you just going through motions? Because, if the reasons have disappeared, you need to build new ones. You need support and structure and people who notice if you don't show up to your own life. If this story resonated with you, if you recognized that emptiness and paralysis, I hope you'll subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who might be struggling silently with the same darkness. Leave a comment telling me what gets you out of bed, because we all need reasons. Hit the like button if you found this real and honest. We need to talk about this invisible crisis. We need to stop pretending that motivation and purpose just naturally persist. Sometimes they disappear. And when they do, we need help to find them again. That's something I'm learning one difficult morning at a time.